Hi, I'm Elizabeth Landine with the National Environmental Health Association. We'd like to share information with you today about the National Environmental Assessment Reporting System, otherwise known as NEARS, which is a surveillance system that captures environmental assessment data from foodborne illness outbreak investigations. Participating in NEARS can help prevent foodborne illness outbreaks associated with restaurants, banquet facilities, schools, and other institutions. CDC and the National Food Safety Partners recommend that all food safety programs use NEARS to improve food safety in the United States. This brief informational webinar will provide you with an overview of what NEARS is, how it can positively impact your food safety program, and prevent and reduce future outbreaks within your jurisdiction, and therefore keep your community safe. You will hear from 3 speakers. The first speaker is Eric Coleman. Eric is a health scientist with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, National Center for Environmental Health. Eric will provide an overview of NEARS. Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So go ahead and just jump right into things. As I'm sure many of you are aware, foodborne illness is a significant problem here in the United States, but addressing environmental causes can help prevent it. Typically, foodborne illness outbreaks are reported to CDC's National Outbreak Reporting System, or NEARS, by state epidemiologists. However, the data reported often includes little or no information on environmental causes of foodborne illness outbreaks. Now, the National Environmental Assessment Reporting System, or NEARS, serves as a companion surveillance system to NEARS, which is used by state and local environmental health professionals for reporting of foodborne outbreak environmental assessment data. NEARS captures environmental factors and provides the information needed to recommend effective short-term and long-term interventions to stop ongoing foodborne outbreaks and prevent them in the future. Historically, CDC has collected the lab and epi components of a foodborne illness outbreak, but lacked the environmental component of outbreaks. NEARS collects the environmental assessment data that helps us understand how and why outbreaks occur. Typically conducted by an environmental health specialist, a foodborne outbreak environmental assessment is very different from other types of environmental activities food programs conduct on a daily basis. The challenge of a foodborne outbreak environmental assessment is the reconstruction of past events. And even more challenging is the fact that these assessments represent one component of response that involves not only the food program, but often epidemiologists, laboratory professionals, and possibly others from other program areas who are all working as a team to help reconstruct past events, and ultimately working to identify contributing factors, their environmental antecedents, and then generating recommendations for informed interventions. Now, just to provide a little bit more context, contributing factors are determinants that directly or indirectly cause an outbreak. They describe how the outbreak occurred, and they're categorized as contamination factors, proliferation factors, and survival factors. Now, your environmental antecedents are factors that lead to contributing factors, and they describe why the outbreak occurred. And based on our work here at CDC, we have identified categories of potential antecedents, and they include people, process, equipment, economic, and food factors. Now, we can't overstate the value of reported environmental assessment data, as these data are key to, again, helping us understand how and why outbreaks occur. They assist with developing appropriate guidelines, policies, and practices that ultimately help to prevent future outbreaks. When these data are also collected, it also provides us an opportunity to engage our food safety officials that are responsible for conducting environmental assessments. And then it also provides us an opportunity to link environmental assessment data to the National Outbreak Reporting System, or NEARS. So I'm sure now many of you are probably wondering, what's in it for my program? What do I get from reporting environmental assessment data to NEARS? Now, it is important to remember that NEARS is a surveillance system, and by their nature, surveillance systems are not designed to provide immediate benefits to participants, unless they're being paid, of course. They're designed to provide benefits over a long-term period, but here are some thoughts on some more immediate benefits. Now, for state and locals that actually are reporting into NEARS, we actually provide annual summary reports that help summarize the data that's reported for that year. These summary reports also complement Standard 5 requirements for those that are interested in meeting FDA's retail program standards, again, specifically Standard 5. Participating in NEARS also provides you an opportunity to communicate and collaborate with other state and locals that are participating. On a quarterly basis, we hold quarterly forums with all of our NEARS participants, and we get them together to kind of talk through activities related to environmental assessments and ways to improve the overall process. Additionally, as we begin to collect more data, there will be opportunities for folks to potentially publish scientific data. And then also there's opportunities to document and track foodborne outbreak response. So thinking more long-term, we'd like to be able to think through how the data that's collected in NEARS can improve foodborne outbreak response. Specifically, what investigation characteristics lead to the identification of environmental factors? Or do worker interviews make contributing factor identification more likely? Additionally, data that can be collected in NEARS will also assist us in answering things like what environmental antecedents are linked to specific contributing factors. So is the lack of ill worker policies linked with workers while working ill? So in closing, the support of environmental assessments at the state and local level essentially help us to collect data on a national level. And these data assist with improving the identification of environmental factors contributing to foodborne illness outbreaks. And then they also assist with improving the food safety prevention and intervention efforts. And then ultimately improving food safety, which leads to fewer outbreaks. Now, for additional information, please feel free to contact me here at CDC, and my contact information will be provided at the end of today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. The second speaker today is Dan O'Halloran. Dan is the NEARS coordinator with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Dan will talk about how NEARS can positively impact the state's food safety program and why all states should participate. Dan, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks Elizabeth for the introduction. Hi everybody. The goal of my presentation is to show you how New York City has incorporated the NEARS data collection process into the foodborne illness outbreak investigation process. I'll also show you how NEARS can be used to deepen understandings of foodborne illness outbreaks, identify trends, and foster a foodborne illness prevention-oriented environment. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see the main groups involved in foodborne illness outbreak investigations in New York City. One major benefit of NEARS data collection is that it has increased communication and collaboration between these groups. The Office of Environmental Investigation responds to public complaints of foodborne illness and houses the health inspectors that perform sanitary inspections at food service establishments with suspected outbreaks. The Bureau of Communicable Disease performs the EPI-analysis for all confirmed foodborne illness outbreaks that occur in restaurants in New York City, and the Public Health Laboratory tests for viral and bacterial pathogens of all stool and food samples that are collected in the field. NEARS data collection and reporting requires input from all three of these groups, and it has helped to foster a collaborative environment. Next slide. One of the main advantages of collecting NEARS data is that you can start to see trends in the data over time, both nationally and for your jurisdiction. These trends can help to inform policies, interventions, or outreach materials that you may develop to educate the public or restaurant operators in your area. On this slide, you'll see a table for one of our projects that's in development, a foodborne illness outbreak annual report that is specific to New York City. We're using a combination of NEARS, NORS, and complaint data to develop an annual report. Some of the tables that we're developing include complaints received by source, food worker testing, food service establishment demographics, agents identified, contributing factors, and environmental antecedents identified during investigations. When this report's finalized, we intended to share it with internal stakeholders so that everyone can have a better idea of what foodborne illness outbreak landscape in New York City looks like. We can use this data to create interventions to prevent future outbreaks and develop resources to educate both restaurant operators and the general public. Next slide. Although it takes a while to accumulate a critical mass of data to be able to describe data patterns, one of the major benefits of participating in NEARS is that the CDC develops national summary reports of NEARS data annually, as Eric previously mentioned. CDC also develops summary reports for each jurisdiction, even if your numbers of reported outbreaks is low, which is a major benefit for jurisdictions that may not have the resources or the time to do so themselves. On this slide, you'll see one of the summary reports developed by CDC for New York City in 2015. Data visualizations are created to describe some of the outbreak characteristics for each jurisdiction that participate in NEARS. Next slide. So to summarize, some of the main benefits to participating in NEARS are: the NEARS data collection process fosters an environment that requires collaboration and communication. Standardized electronic data collection allows for monitoring trends in foodborne illness over time. And environmental assessment data can be used to inform policies, create interventions, and develop educational resources that can help prevent future outbreaks. And back to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Dan. Our final speaker today is Danny Ripley. Danny is an environmental health specialist with the Nashville Metro Public Health Department. Danny will talk about how NEARS can prevent and reduce future outbreaks within your local jurisdiction and thereby ensure the safety of your community. Danny, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and hello, everyone. I'll be talking a little bit about Tennessee's experience with NEARS throughout the state of Tennessee, and I'll jump right in with a little bit of background about Tennessee. And the size of Tennessee is we have 95 counties with 7 regions and 5 contract counties. We have approximately 169 environmental health specialists across the state. We're a centralized food regulatory agency, and we serve a 63 million population, and 28,000 food establishments are within the state of Tennessee. One of the challenges with conducting foodborne outbreak investigations is that with our environmentalists across the state is often we have limited training for folks across the state. The training that we had used in the past was a statewide type training, which was very infrequent. We also participated in regional tabletop exercises, but again, this training was pretty limited. And there was a lack of uniform investigative protocols established. In other words, throughout the state, as outbreak investigations were taking place and environmental assessments were occurring, there would be variation among environmentalists in terms of how they conducted that environmental assessment. So there's also a lack of investigation standardization. So there was no standardization of inspectors across the board, ensuring that there's a uniform process for conducting environmental assessments. And then finally, there is the limited outbreak experience. If we look at the state over the last 2 years, you'll see that we have relatively few outbreak investigations that are taking place, even in the metropolitan cities. In some cases, in some regions, we have no outbreaks occurring. So what happens in these situations is we have a very limited experience for the environmentalists in those regions, and we may have folks out there who have simply never investigated a foodborne outbreak, or have had, or it's been so long since the outbreak they last investigated that many of the skills and many of the techniques were forgotten. Okay. So our participation in NEARS has assisted us in conducting more efficient outbreak investigations, and this has occurred through the assignment of individuals who have experience within each region as lead outbreak investigators. We're also involved now more in environmental assessment training, which is a part of the NEARS participation, where we ask folks to conduct or to complete the e-learning interactive training. And also we're going out as a team and conducting face-to-face training on environmental assessments as well as NEARS data collection. We also have a continual improvement plan underway. And what this consists of is understanding what gaps we have among our environmentalists, whether it be knowledge or equipment or experience gaps, and then basing our training around those gaps and ensuring that those folks have the knowledge and the tools needed to effectively conduct environmental assessments. And then finally, as part of NEARS participation, we have a higher level of support at the central office. We have individuals at the central office who can assist in data collection throughout the outbreak investigation for NEARS data, but also conducting the environmental assessments. So what are the outcomes of the participation in NEARS? Well, as stated earlier, it certainly improves communication. It can improve communication among epidemiologists and environmentalists for the identification of contributing factors. Also, it facilitates communication between environmentalists and operators. There's a higher level of interview, manager interview that's collected for NEARS data that allows environmentalists to communicate topics of food safety to operators during the environmental assessment. There's improved consistency among environmental assessments through the training and through the outbreak support. We anticipate that our outbreaks will be conducted in a more uniform fashion, so we don't have the variation from region to region. The use of NEARS data is also valuable. We can evaluate outbreaks across the entire state and report on those outbreaks. We can also better understand contributing factors and antecedents. And this is valuable to routine inspections, the emphasis we place on inspections, as well as the training that we provide to the restaurant operators. The data provides documentation for the work we do. And this is very important, especially when it comes time to show the powers that be what we do, the work that we're conducting, and in some cases it allows us to leverage for more positions or more resources. And then finally, it contributes to nationwide research. And as we know, looking at NORS data and the data that has been collected for years with NORS, the NEARS data could serve the same purpose. Understanding these environmental antecedents can influence change, it can influence policy, and it can make us do our jobs more efficiently, more effectively. And that's just some of the reasons that we participate in NEARS. So at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Danny. Great. And thank you to all our presenters today. As you've seen and heard, participation in NEARS improves food safety at the local, state, and national level. If you are not yet participating in the surveillance system, we look forward to hearing from you soon. To find out more about NEARS and how your state or local jurisdiction can be part of it, please contact or connect with the person who provided you with this presentation, or feel free to contact Eric Coleman, whose information is provided for you here. Thank you.